All right. Hello, everybody. My name is Keith Salmon, and I'm very excited this morning to have you join us on Million Dollar Stories. I believe that everybody's got a $1 million story, and it's just a matter of what you want to do with it. So today I've got a really special guest. Her name is Mary Phan, and she is launching a podcast called Unleash Your Fire. And it sounds kind of like some of the things that I work with. I work with premise called Own Your Story. So Unleash Your Fire kind of drew me to Mary. So she was kind enough to come to the broadcast this morning, and I really appreciate that. Um, I just I wanted to ask Mary. First of all, hello. Thank you for coming.
Hi, Keith. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me on the show. I'm so excited and nervous too.
Okay, so it's all good. We're just gonna have a conversation, and I am looking for something here. Hang on one second, and I wanted to make sure that we were on here. So, all right. Well, let's just continue. I think. Uh, Stay on the page. Okay, so sorry about that. So Mary, I said, I'm story driven. Everything is about story for me. So what I would like to know is what was the burning desire that you had to get you into your podcast scenario, and what was that moment that you said, I got to do a podcast?
Well, it actually started from a long time ago. I didn't get into podcasts just because to get into podcasts. It was a lot of twists and turns in my story to get me to where I am today to start this podcast. So we're going to have to start from the very beginning. So, what I usually tell people is the beginning of my story because it relates to everything else up to this point. So, what happened was that when I was a very young child, my mom disappeared one day, and I was left at home with a father that was barely ever home. And sometimes he forgot to bring me food, and sometimes I would end up waking up in the hospital, and sometimes nobody comes to pick me up. So, fast forward um, in a very sort of traumatic, sad sort of childhood, I became a very sad person. I'm that kind of person that, like, if you naturally eat rice or bread or noodles or whatever, I naturally cry. I could walk crying, sleep crying, sit crying. And there's one day in particular, I remember very clearly. I was walking towards a bus station and I sat down. It was a really cloudy and rainy day, and there's this woman in a yellow raincoat. She came up to me and she asked me, "Are you okay?" And she handed me a yellow napkin. Well, it was clean, but at that moment, I was really shocked because usually nobody really sees me. And she saw me at the moment and she even asked me, "Are you okay?" The three warmest words I've ever heard in my entire lifetime, even though it's very common for most people. Are you okay? How are you today? Like all those kind of things, we just automatically say, yeah, 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 we're totally fine. And yeah, so I quickly responded the same way too, like I'm fine, thank you. Like just move on, right? Just really embarrassed. And what I'm trying to say with the story is that I've experienced a lot of kindness from strangers in my entire lifetime. But when you're a really sad person, you don't notice these things happening. You just keep on thinking about how sad life is, and you kind of victimize yourself. And it took me a really long time to actually step out of that kind of mentality. And finally, I always tried really hard to pay back the kindness of strangers. At some point in my life, I even worked myself to the bone, always thinking, okay, how can I make money? How can I repay these people. Like there are some people that have done really, really great things for me. And to me, to the younger version of me, all I could think of is like pay them with money. But at that point, I was doing it in a really sort of not so smart way. And so I was working myself to the bone and almost on the verge of dying. And there was this really generous couple. They said to me, you know what? We don't want your money. All we want you to be is happy and healthy. And so I, from that moment on, I strive to be happy and healthy instead of money oriented. But it wasn't that easy for someone, like me, uh, who didn't really want to exist in the world to actually become all of a sudden happy and healthy. But I worked really hard at it. And when you're in a happy state, you become, look, the luck starts coming. You start seeing good things. And the way you talk or the way you act is totally different. And so things change for me. But the same question still stays is how can I repay the kindness of strangers? And to me, it is helping to save the planet. And as cheesy as it sounds, like it's about helping to keep our earth clean. And I'm not saying it a way that I'm not a tree hugger or anything like that. I just say it in a common sense sort of way. I'm not perfectly eco-friendly. I just started my journey not too long ago, so there's a lot of things I actually don't know, and I want to be open and honest about that. I started a company called Hot Pug, and the name itself actually means you never lock a dog in a hot car. Why would you lock yourself on a hot planet? It's one of those names that is easy to remember and it has a sustainable meaning behind it. And it's just like Apple computers, right? Apple computers is actually not an Apple, it's a computer. And we sell eco-friendly journals to women entrepreneurs or women leaders. And why women leaders, like specifically? Because I am a woman myself. I'm an entrepreneur myself. And I see that it starts, everything starts from an idea. And it starts from writing it down in a journal, like, or some paper. And so that's why I thought it was really meaningful to do this thing. But then it didn't quite work out the way I wanted it to. In your entrepreneurship journey, it never goes in a straight line. It goes up and down like that. And I was really obsessed with finding the most eco-friendly way to design and produce this journal. I took too long. The pandemic hit, and this is the worst time to actually launch a product because of the global supply chain disruption. It's really complicated. And I don't, even though I have already, started my Instagram page and there was some people that were following me on that page and they were really supportive. They knew my story and they wanted to support. They're always asking me, we're ready to buy. When are you going to sell? I didn't want to risk their money because this whole thing is brand new and the money might get caught in the middle when they order a journal, right?
So you were
And
so,
so,
could I
yes,
ask a quick question? Are you so the journals, right? So you're selling. You were in the process of trying to sell like journals that people would actually write. They would order it, and you would help them to sort of like catalog what their story is. And were you involved with them, or you were just selling them a journal to get them started?
it was a Kickstarter campaign I was planning for,
I see.
and it's a very basic journal to get them started with thinking about their eco-friendly ideas or their dreams or whatever, because I had a really traumatic past. So I think for lots of women on their entrepreneurial path, one thing that stops them the most is mindset. So if they're always trapped about thinking about the past, they don't get past the past and don't go towards the future. And if they don't go towards the future and live a more prosperous life, they won't have the opportunity to think beyond that, which is the eco-friendly life. Look, I come from a very poor past, and I know when you're not making money and you're really tired going to this job and that job and that job, breaking your back, you don't have time to think about how are you going to recycle this and that, because you're just so worried about the next month's rent or food on a table, or just those basic things.
Sure.
So that's what the journal is for, like to write your story. And that is just like the version 1.0, right? And in the future, there will be different versions, which will narrow down and help you even further more. But even like Apple, because I really like Apple products, so I keep on using their sample example. But even
Sure.
with the first product, it's very basic, and then you go from there. But before I got to that point, this pandemic happened, and I was like, okay, this is a really critical point. I got to pivot. If I don't pivot, this is it. Everybody's like very well, let's say at the beginning of the pandemic, nobody knew it was that serious. You just think it's another SARS or something. And, back then nobody was wearing face masks. Well, I live in Canada. It didn't happen here, but it might be in Asia. But anyways, the point is it got really serious to the point that nobody could look away anymore. So we've got to pivot. And if not a physical product, then what?
Right. Right.
And at that point, I never listened to a podcast before. I had no idea. And I was talking to people, and a business coach somehow mentioned podcasts. And it was in the back of my mind somewhere. I kept on hearing podcasts from different places. Like, even though I've never heard of an actual podcast, I never actually tuned in before.
Right. Right.
And so I was like, okay, let's do it. Let's do a podcast. Let's spread the love and the messages through the air. We're all about woman empowerment, sustainability, entrepreneurship, that kind of direction. And so I said, let's do it. And that was the moment that we got started.
So your idea for the podcast was born. I mean, it takes, the accumulation of all the experience, your life experience, to come to the place. And I think a lot of people, when the pandemic hit, they were kind of caught not ready for anything like that. How could anybody be ready for something like this? And so the trajectory of where you're going, it's just a different vehicle to serve people. It's like, how do you get? It's like a physical product to someone, or is it knowledge and teaching, which you can do via even how we're speaking right now. We can touch somebody out there that's looking for a change or having trouble. I think the people that pivot first are able to serve the people that haven't yet figured out how to pivot, or even know that they should pivot. I kind of call it waiting it out. There's a lot of people, I think, waiting it out right now, and then things will get back to normal, whatever that is, and then I think you're on the right track. So you went in and you took all that experience and you said yes. I think that's the thing that people need to do, right? They say yes. Yes, I'd like.
Yeah.
Yes, I can do it. I can try it. I have to. My mission might have changed slightly just on deliverables. Really, that's the way I look at it. It's your mission is the same though.
I just
Yeah.
jumped. I just jumped at the opportunity.
Yeah, and podcast. Maybe it's not podcast. Maybe next year it'll be holograms. We'll be sending holograms to everybody. Who knows? My career went through various forms of technology. I was kind of blessed long to be in it. The film editing is where I started, and film editing is technologically speaking has changed it incredibly. I mean, that was when I was doing it. It was before I think there was no computer editing. There was some videotape editing, like news stations, in a whole different format. And then what they tried to do is they had to try to get, because we think non-linearly. Does that make sense? Our brains are random access. So what that means is we don't think about our life story in once upon a time from point A to point B. That's how we try to organize it, but it doesn't live in our brains that way. So the big technology breakthrough was when they figured out how to do random access, and it was all about the size of the compression of the information. And now you can edit on your phone. And obviously back then, I remember taking 1.5 gigabyte hard drives, 1.5 gigabytes, and they were like the size of shoeboxes that weighed about 5 pounds. And if I went to New York or something, we'd have to put them in suitcases and walk them through. And they looked all crazy in the X-ray, and it's like 1.5. The thumb drive is like 64 gigs or more now. But it was all about the storage. When they got the storage and things like we're doing right now, live streaming or podcast. But the thing my point is that what survived all of the technology is story. Like you're talking about. You pivoted on a physical product that you were going to be sending to people to help them somewhere, and you just changed the deliverables. Kind of, right?
Yeah, and I discovered something way much more meaningful because this is, like you said, this is the time to actually serve. And that's where I started. It was like, okay, I'm a woman eco entrepreneur, and I know how hard it is to start a small business. And I understand all the burnouts and overwhelm because I've been on Instagram for like 8 hours a day for 3+ months. And I was like, this is a problem. I'm going to go solve it. I don't know exactly how I'm going to monetize it the moment I said I'm going to jump on podcasts, but I'm just going to do it. And I'll go from a perspective of serving other people first because I believe in karma. So what I did was I went out and approached women eco entrepreneurs and talked to them about their problems and asked them if they wanted to be on the podcast to help promote their businesses. And everybody said yes. I mean, it was overwhelming. There were so many people that responded to me. At first I was really worried that nobody would actually come onto my show. But then when I started, if you start from a point where you're honestly like genuinely want to help other people feel it too and they want to help you back. And that's how it all got started. And like even though at the beginning of it you don't know how to monetize it, it's totally okay. You will figure it out in time. So I took a lot of podcasting courses. I read everything I could about podcasting. I became a podcast junkie and I listened to so many podcasts. And now I know so much benefits about podcasting. I'm like, oh my God, I'm so happy I actually started this. But it wouldn't have started if I didn't actually jump in first and help other people first.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Action. I think taking action is contagious. You set an example for someone, and you're going to help people by just taking the action. Um, so that's awesome. So your podcast is called Unleash Your Fire, and
Yes.
did you? Basically, I'm just going to kind of guess a little bit, but you can correct me and you can fill in the blanks. But it sounds like from what's within you, right? Is where your fire lives. I'm presuming, and then how my premise and everything that I've always, but when I say this $1 million story, everybody's got a $1 million story. It just depends on what they do with it. You could take a $1 million story and create a $1 million business, or you could have your $1 million story create a second plan B type of business and make a $50,000 business, but still use your $1 million, story. So the fire and that $1 million story is within everybody, and some people just can't find it. They can't find it. So is that sort of in line with what Unleash Your Fire is all about?
Yes, it actually has a more meaning to it if I can,
Absolutely.
share it with everybody here. Well, first of all, the name Unleash Your Fire actually came from the journal itself. The journal, in the middle of the journal, when you open it, there is, I should have just brought my journal with me. But, anyways, when you open it, in the middle, there is a coloring page and it says, Unleash the fire within you. And what that means is that we all have potential inside of us that is waiting to unleash. And that fire is passion. And that fire is not only passion, but also I'm talking about global warming, to do something about it. But you have to let go of the past first. That's why you write inside the journal, write past your past. And that's why there's a coloring page inside of it for you to color and remember your childhood. And even though I didn't have much of a childhood, but I feel like I'm living my childhood right now because I'm so happy every single day. And sometimes we're so busy doing the things we're doing, we forget to have a little bit of fun. And so behind the name Unleash Your Fire, there's I put a lot of thought into it, and that's why it's called Unleash Your Fire.
Mm-hmm. So, are you going to be sending? Couldn't you send your journal out digitally to your podcast listeners somehow? Just
Actually, I haven't thought of that. I've just been so focused on
oh
launching the podcast and talking to different women eco entrepreneurs. I haven't thought of that.
yeah. Well, we can
Yeah.
talk about that. I mean, it's just sometimes I guess basically what I've been taught and what I try to teach people that I work with is just everything you do, even if you had to take a break from the pandemic, everything you do and created, every note that you've written. Um, I think I've mentioned it before to you, but I can't believe I don't have one on my desk. But I write the 3x5 cards. Every time I write on a 3x5 card, it's an asset for me because it might be a great idea. It might just be a reminder of something, but it might be a it might be the $1 million idea. And so it's like your journal is an asset that you already have. So maybe
Yes.
that ties in to it could be something that could really help your listeners, because it's something you have and you've created. And if it's logistics shipping that you can't do, it's I mean the information highway is right there where we're on it right now. So just spitballing with you, uh, that's we all do that. We all just go, what can we do with what we have? And how can we use it? How can we repurpose it? And it's like every time we shoot a video, um, every time I shoot one, or every time I write a script, or anytime I'm, just creating, you never throw anything away, unless it's really terrible. But then, even if it is terrible, in my experience, I go back and I look at it. There might be one little gem that I was kind of couldn't quite get a handle on, but I go, now I get it. I understand it. But it's sort of like time capsule material for me. Part of the story and the journey, and it's like, what do you do with the story? And your story of overcoming some things and learning from and making a mission out of it is inspiring. It's really
Thank
cool.
Thank you, Keith. You're right. That's a really great idea. I just haven't thought about it, and I was because to me the journal is not dead. It's just postponed to a later date.
Yeah, he's in a small coma, but go in and check on it before it goes. And so June 2nd is it a so is that how does that work? How does it just becomes available and people look for it and you promote it and you talk about where it lives, and are you I guess maybe you could tell me about how frequently you're going to be doing them, and what type of guests you're looking for, all that kind of stuff.
So first of all, on June 2nd, when you tune into Apple Podcasts or Google Podcasts, Stitcher, whichever platform you're listening on, we're on most of them, the bigger ones. Uh, you will find 5 episodes on there. We are launching with 5 episodes, and then every other week on Tuesday, we'll come up with 1 episode. Yeah.
Okay, and then when you have subscribers, they get all. How does the marketing work? Are you doing a lot of marketing or a lot of pushing things around? You're getting into understanding that, maybe an idea for you is to go on other people's podcasts. You're on one now, actually, kind of.
Absolutely. We all know it's all about promoting and marketing. I I started a Facebook group this week, and it within less than 1 week there's more than 100 members already. So I'm really really happy. And inside it's really active, and everybody's really nice, and making genuine connections inside. And I have it's all about promoting for me from this point on. And there's you have to grow the email list, and you have to nurture that email list, and talk to the people inside the email list to keep on talking about what you're going to be talking about next.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, pitching yourself onto other people's podcasts. That's the number one way to grow your podcast. There's just on my list of how to promote the podcast, it is huge. And one of them this week was actually to make an audiogram. Now, for anybody who doesn't know what an audiogram out there, it's basically imagine this post that has a graphic on it and some sound bites, like some waves of somebody talking, and there's voice attached to it. That's an audiogram. So I spend so much time trying to figure out this audiogram thing because first of all, I'm not a techie. And then I tried so many different apps to actually make it work. And when it finally worked and I started using these audiograms to push it out and promote the individual podcast, I get so much feedback because people just love them. It's visual. You can see the podcast. You can see the guest face on there. You can see when they talk because there's a small snippet of their story, of their interview on this audiogram. And you kind of get a sense of what this particular episode is about. And lot of these women that they're on my show, they have really great stories to tell. So basically, it sells itself. It's a story that people want to tune into to listen to. You don't really have to try too hard to even push it. You just naturally put it out there, tell their story, and people want to find out more about them, let's say. So audiogram is a really good way to go. But the thing with audiogram is there's a lot of audiograms that are really easy to produce, and you could possibly do it free too, but it doesn't have a lot of effects in it, such as the images inside moving, or on our audiogram, there's actually captions that, as the person talks, it kind of bounces each word out. These things are really eye-catching. And the thing is, with these days, nobody has the attention span to listen or read, or, just everybody's attention span is really short.
It's a challenge.
Yes.
It's a challenge to cut through.
Yes. If you use any sort of audiogram that's really plain and doesn't have much of an effect on there, it's not going to work, and you might as well not make an audiogram. And that's why I've been really stubborn, and I worked really hard to make these audiograms work and for it to be really engaging. Because think of this, if you're willing to go through the hard work to make something that not everybody can do, then it's different from the crowd, and that's how you stand out, and that's how I can help further promote these other women eco entrepreneurs and their business.
Right. So tell me about your Facebook group again. How did you tell how do you channel people into your Facebook group? What's that process like?
That process is, I talk to people one
Mm-hmm.
at a time and create genuine connections. I tell them what I do. Well, first of all, I'm very curious about them and I really want to actually make a real authentic connection. And then I listen to their story if they're willing to talk to me. And sometimes it's about being thick skinned. You can't just talk to a few people and then if they ignore you, you just back off, right? I just, even though initially I'm a very low confident introvert person, but when you have a mission so strong that you want to go and help out other people, you transform into a different person. And that's how I feel like myself. I'm not usually comfortable with a lot of no's, but then because I have this purpose behind me, I really want to help you. I'm not trying to sell you something. So there's nothing to be afraid of. I just message people one at a time and go into different other Facebook groups to chat. At first, I had no idea what I'm doing. I'm just like throwing spaghetti at the wall and seeing what works. And all of a sudden, a snow avalanche, happen starts to happen. Miracles starts to happen, and a lot of people starts noticing you. And because you're not out there to sell, you're actually there to help. Who doesn't want to be helped? Look, we pay so much money for Facebook advertisement to boost our Instagram posts. Why wouldn't you let somebody help you for free? Duh. Right?
Right, right.
Yeah.
No, that's awesome. It's contagious. You genuinely can teach something. What you're doing right now is teaching someone something of value. It gives them value, and they want to become closer to you because of that. And it should be reciprocal. And then you're not going to buy. In the whole planet, there's how many billions of people, and you can't connect. There's no way that they're all going to buy whatever you have. And so if you can make an impact, I guess that's the point. You can make an impact, but it's sort of like a family tree in a way. It's like you impact, say just for mathematics, say you impact 10 people a month, and then those people impact 10 people a month. It's like it's exponential how much the seed of your mission comes through to those other people. And if everybody does that, and everybody was doing it with a real ethical and inspiring way, it would be pretty awesome. You know, so you're doing it. That's congratulations on taking the mission. Probably so many people are wondering how it gets done, and you're paving the way for others to do what you're doing.
You just put your head down and keep on doing it. Nobody knows what they're doing, but you'll figure it out one step at a time. But just
Right.
don't go out, trying to sell yourself all the time. Try to go at an angle that you're trying to help other people. Yes,
Mm-hmm.
some people will be really skeptical and they ask you why you're doing this. What are you trying to sell me? Those people, it's totally fine. You move on. There's the next person. I find so many nice people to connect with. It's so inspiring. Like if I haven't started in the first place and I backed down because of several people who said no or looked down at me because I didn't have a big group to start with. Actually, everybody starts from zero, right? If I just back down, it would never become the way it is today. And even though there's only 100 people, like a little bit more than 100 people right now, but it only started. And I'm very confident when the podcast is launched, it will have a snowball effect and it would just get bigger and bigger. And whoever that's looking down on you, who cares? There's the next person, right?
Well, I think that part of even my transformation in my perception of what this world was, because I was doing a whole different career for a really long time, and what happens is I kind of forget. You forget that people are in businesses people were in the business that I got into before I was. So it seemed like when you're not in it, you're outside of it. And it looks like a closed shop because those people have been doing it for all this time. But the fact of the matter is that those people, just like they do in Facebook groups, they come in and, well, some are coming in, some are going out. Just like the actual workforce, some are coming in and some are going out. And then the people that are even aware that this is an offering in the world, they they come in and they come out, and then it's just the amount of people that are available to serve and the amount of people that need to be served. I mean, it's just obviously kind of makes sense, but when you're outside looking in, it's confusing, and it doesn't mean that it's a completely closed shop, if you know what I mean. It's like you don't have to. I mean, if you have a mission and you have an idea and a story and a vision, and you have desire, you can make it happen. You have the right to make it happen. And at a certain point, it starts to feel like a responsibility to make it happen to me. And it changes everything. It's not the goal isn't the cash and prizes, as I call it. But that might be a residual effect. It's not really a goal the way I see it. But if you are able to help people, just like, you know, people, doctors help people, and they have to go to school for a really long time to help people. And every experience that I have, I learn from it, which adds value that I can pass on. And you're doing it. That's really cool. Do you have any? Do you want to tell us about your first guest? Is that something you would want to do? Tell us what your first show is about. Can
Well,
you do
my
that?
sure. First of all, I just want to slightly touch on it. When you were saying serving, it's so very little people are actually serving, and most people are out there to get. So when you really go out to actually try to serve people, it's it makes you stand out from the crowd. And second of all, this is doing this, we're actually helping out each other. If you can see it in a way like you try, how do I say it? You grow big together as a group. It's not just me, one person helping you. When you grow a group, it's everybody helping out each other. And it's like you said, it's 1 to 10, and then exponentially it goes up. And then third of all, when you, if I have to talk about the first episode, it's Mavis. She came onto my show, and I was talking to her, and she told me about her story, how she likes to go travel by herself. And one time she went to these mountains, and inside the mountains, she met these ladies inside the mountains. There were no electricity there, no toilet, no food. They just live the way, they just eat whatever there is there. And so she asked these ladies if she could stay there for the night, and they said okay. And then she ended up staying there for about a week, and they formed really good, friendship. And then before she left, she actually said, "I'm gonna figure out a way to come back to help you." And then
Wow.
2 years later, she actually went back with an idea.
Well, I tell you what, I was going to ask you where that was, but I don't think you should tell us so that they have to come to the podcast to find out where the mountain, So we'll
Yeah.
find out on June 2nd where that was in the world. That's
Yes,
cool. That's
please.
a cool story. That's
It
great.
is. It's really touching. Like when, I mean, I knew that her product was eco-friendly, but I didn't know that story behind it. But if you don't actually talk to that person to find out, you don't know. You just think, okay, it's just another product. But then the story behind it made me feel like if I ever needed a product like what she's selling, she's the person I'm going to buy from. Stories are just so powerful. It's way beyond just making another advertisement and sticking it out there in front of people and say, "Hey, I sell this thing. Come and buy it." No, like tell me your story. Let me know who you are first.
Right. I mean, some of the formats too that we have available to us, like in a podcast and like in a live situation that we're doing now, or in your group, you've got the opportunity to really um, spend some time with them. They're there on the voluntary basis. You're not catching them. It's like you're driving down a freeway and you see a billboard and you have to look at it and read it in 5 seconds without getting in an accident. That's one style of advertising. And then if you drive down that highway every day for 2 years, you maybe pick up on that message. And then, but the opposite is here. They're in here and they're here because of you, and you have an opportunity to really get to know them, what they want, and to get to have them get to know you. And it is a community, and they look to each other and they look to you for leadership. But then within the group, they look for, the common ground to speak on and to communicate on and to be part of a movement. And that's, different, a completely different thing than it was, like you say, just putting an ad out there, just sticking it out there and expecting somebody to just jump in and opt in and just buy something. It's just not, that's not, for what we do, that's not how it really happens. So we're about out of time, but why don't you just tell us again where we can find you? And on June 2nd, Unleash Your Fire by Mary Phan. Is that how you say it? Or how do you say it?
Uh, Unleash Your Fire.
Mm-hmm. Do you
Yeah,
say
that's
do you say by Mary Phan? How's it introduced? Are you? I'm Mary Phan, and my show. How would you introduce your show?
well, actually, the podcast cover says by Hot Pug Heroin, and Hot Pug is the sustainability meaning behind it. I just don't want to call it like green or sustainable because it's sort of it feels sort of plain. I want people to guess what is hot pug,
Sure.
and
Curiosity.
heroin. Yes, heroin doesn't mean me. It actually means them. They're the ones that are choosing to have an eco-friendly business instead of just any other business. It's so much harder to start an eco-friendly business because the standards are higher, the costs are higher, and sometimes it feels like nobody actually cares. So that's why I call them heroines. You are the heroine, not me, and they are on the show, and together we make this show happen. Yeah.
Would you, could I ask you one other quick question about what it's like to be uh, in Canada? Are there any borders? Are we without borders in this world, podcast world?
I'm not exactly sure if I understand that question.
Oh, it's like you're in Canada. I'm in Santa Monica, California, in the U.S. And does it matter where we are?
Oh, it doesn't matter. This is global. I have like all inside the Unleash Your Fire tribe, Unleash Your Fire podcast tribe on Facebook. People are from all over the world.
Great.
Yeah.
That's what I meant. Is without borders is sort of what I was going for there.
Yes.
That's awesome. Congratulations, Mary. I appreciate it. So I believe that you've got that $1 million story. So and you're going to do great. I know you're going to do great. So we're gonna check out right now, and we will. To the people listening on the rebroadcast, we'll thank you for joining us, and the people who were here live, thank you for joining us. So I'm Keith Salmon, and we are going to be back next week, and we're going to say goodbye to Mary, and I want to thank her one more time for just being a terrific guest, and her podcast, Unleash Your Fire, is going to do great. I just know it. So
Thank
thanks
you,
so
Keith.
much, and we will talk to you all later. Thanks.
Thank you.